The bone cleaner's ledger. The air was thick that day in the museum, filled with the scent of dust, betrayal, and the acrid tang of loss. I stood frozen in that sterile room, surrounded by bones, countless skeletal remains gathered in darkened corners, abandoned and forgotten, much like my own reputation. Days before, I'd been declared a thief, the victim of a cruel whisper campaign that twisted my intentions into something monstrous. All I wanted was to dive deeper into the spectral world of osteology, to uncover the stories hidden in those skeletal remains. Instead, I was cast out, my name smeared across the very walls I had devoted my life to. Delusional, my mother had said, her voice cutting through me like a knife. You're going to disgrace this family with your nonsense. My father added, you're obsessed with ghosts, with madness. Get a real job, for God's sake. This isn't sane. But it was madness that saved me. In the darkness that followed my exile, I dove into the macabre, scouring desolate storage rooms, piecing together animal skeletons whose stories had been buried and forgotten by history. I cataloged spectral remains invisible to most, entities that whispered of origins tainted by tragedy, lives cut short by the cruel hand of fate. I became an expert in spectral osteology, a field that thrived on the remnants of lives long extinguished. Years later, when the world finally paid attention to my work, it was not with awe, but with fear. I unearthed truths that had been buried deep in the earth, legends that sent shivers down spines, the haunting of abandoned asylums, the cursed territories where the bones of the wronged still begged for justice. I returned home to the very family that had scorned me, but I wasn't seeking approval, no. I was armed with knowledge that would transform not just my life, but theirs. As I stepped into the house I once knew, a chill crept up my spine. The old walls bore witness to my childhood laughter, but now they felt suffocating, like a tomb. My parents' expressions shifted from surprise to discomfort, their eyes flitting nervously over my attire, a dark flowing cloak that seemed to swallow the light in the room. "Jack," my mother's voice trembled like a leaf caught in a tempest. "What have you become?" I spread my arms wide, revealing a collection of trinkets, bones, strange symbols, and talismans I had gathered from my travels. "I've become what you feared I would, a harbinger of truth. I've seen things you couldn't imagine. I've faced what others run from." My father's sneer returned, barely masking his unease. "This is ridiculous. You're still clinging to those absurd ideas. You've turned into a—" "Stop!" I cut him off, the desperation thick in the air. "You think I live in a fantasy? What I've uncovered is real, and it's coming for us. You'll see." The door creaked open, and the shadows of the room chilled. I had invited a part of my work home, a curious piece I had found not long ago. A cursed relic said to call forth the spirits of the wronged. The air shifted, tension knotting between us as I placed the object on the table. It glimmered darkly, a twisted reminder of the horrors I had unearthed. "Jack, put that away. You don't know what you're messing with," my mother urged, her voice breaking. "Or maybe I do." I stepped back, my heart racing with the thrill of revelation. "You wanted proof? I'll show you." With a whispered incantation, the air crackled. Shadows danced along the walls, swirling around us like predatory spirits. I could feel it, the weight of the truth pressing in, ready to spill forth. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the corner of the room, drawing their gazes. The shadows blurred, thickening with palpable dread. They shifted, coalescing into forms twisted, mournful silhouettes rising from the floorboards, echoing the pain of lives stolen too soon. "Mom! Dad!" I shouted, watching their faces pale as the figures advanced, eyes glimmering with sorrowful wrath. "This is what I faced. This is the consequence of ignoring the dead." The specters wailed, their cries melding with the sound of my parents' panic. I had warned them, but now they were trapped in a reality they had deemed absurd. The monumental weight of their disbelief bore down upon us. "Please don't!" my mother screamed, falling to her knees. I stood still, both horrified and vindicated. They had chosen to mock what they could not understand, and now they were witnesses to their folly. The spirits loomed closer, their limbs stretching toward my parents with an almost pleading urgency. "Repent!" I pressed, my voice cracking with a mix of fear and triumph. "You dismissed the past, but the past never forgets." In that moment, I felt a surge of power. The shadows retreated, leaving my parents gasping in the wake of terror, their faces reflecting the true horror of what they had dismissed. The figures dissipated into whispers, but the echoes of their cries remained, a haunting reminder of the truths I had unearthed. Once the room settled, my parents stared at me with an expression I had longed to see: recognition, understanding, horror. I was no longer a disgrace. I was a warning. They had laughed at my obsession, but now they bore witness to its devastating weight. As I turned to leave, I heard my mother's trembling voice behind me. "Jack, please, come back." I paused. You can't unsee what you've seen, but I'll carry this burden of truth for all of us. As I stepped out into the cool night, the weight of their disbelief lingered like a shadow, a reminder that not all knowledge is meant to be embraced. In the end, I had triumphed over the darkness, but at a cost that would haunt their family forever, a legacy woven with the bones of the past.